Roads turned to mud, and across Europe, people began to whisper the same terrifying thought: God is angry, or the world is ending. But this wasn't a myth. It was real, and it helped set the stage for famine, rebellion, disease, and the collapse of old certainties. This is the largely forgotten story of Europe's 14th century climate crisis, the disaster that history classes rarely explain. For a long time, Europe benefited from relatively mild conditions, often called the medieval warm period. Farms expanded, populations grew, towns became crowded. It felt like progress was unstoppable. But growth has a hidden weakness. When more people depend on every harvest, a few bad seasons don't just cause hardship, they cause catastrophe. Then, in the early 1300s, the weather began to shift, not gradually, but violently. Starting around 1314 to 1315, storms and heavy rains hammered much of northern Europe. Fields became swamps. Grain couldn't ripen. Didn't they? Even when farmers worked harder, nature refused to cooperate. And when food gets scarce, everything breaks at once. Prices rise, wages fall, crime increases. Trust in leaders collapses. This was not just a few rainy years. It was a system-wide shock, like pulling the floor out from under an entire civilization. Then came the nightmare. The Great Famine of 1315 to 1317. Millions faced starvation. Chronic hunger became normal. People ate seed grain, the very grain needed for next year's planting, which guaranteed future failure. Reports from the time describe a world turned upside down. Families abandoning homes. Cities overwhelmed with hungry refugees. Entire villages weakened to the point where basic work simply stopped. And hunger doesn't only kill directly, it destroys the body's defenses, making people easy targets for disease. Europe didn't know it yet, but the worst was still ahead. The climate instability of the 14th century wasn't just about famine, it reshaped power. When harvests fail, governments panic. They raise taxes, seize grain, and impose harsh controls. This often fuels anger, and anger turns into unrest. Meanwhile, desperate people migrate. They crowd into towns, searching for food and work. That crowding creates the perfect environment for epidemics. So when another disaster arrived later in the century, a disease that moved fast and killed brutally, Europe was already vulnerable. In the late 1340s, the Black Death swept across Europe. It didn't appear out of nowhere. In a healthy, stable society, Europe had been battered for decades. Malnutrition, weakened immune systems, strained governments, and disrupted trade networks. In that fragile world, the plague hit like a hammer. Whole communities collapsed. Workforces vanished. Old beliefs cracked. And survivors began to question everything. Why did prayers fail? Why did the rich survive more often? Why did leaders seem helpless? The climate crisis didn't cause the plague, but it helped create the conditions where disaster multiplied. Many historians connect this era to the beginning of a longer cooling trend, often called the Little Ice Age. It wasn't one single winter that ruined everything. It was repeated instability that turned certainty into fear. Think of it like this. A society can survive one shock, but constant shocks change how people live, how governments rule, and how communities trust each other. In the 14th century, Europe learned a brutal lesson. When the climate shifts, history shifts with it. And that's why this catastrophe matters. Not because it's old history, but because it reveals something timeless. Civilizations don't only fall to wars and kings. Sometimes they fall because the sky changes, and everything underneath it collapses. If you want more hidden history that school rarely teaches, subscribe, because the past still has secrets, and some of them look a lot like the future.